But first, we want to update you now on that military jet crash in Western Virginia. There are still no reports on the condition on the pilot on board. An Augusta County Sheriff's dispatcher says witnesses called in reporting a loud noise. It sounded like the explosion just before 9 o'clock this morning. Also, state police have reported smoke rising from the side of a mountain. It's been on Twitter, too, this area is about 135 miles northwest of Richmond. The Pentagon says they lost communication with a single-seat Air Force F-15C plane, which was based out of Massachusetts. Again, the status of the pilot unknown at this time. An American journalist held captive for nearly 2 years in Syria is now back home in Boston. Peter Theo Curtis was released by his captors just 2 days ago, and now the journalist is on the other side of the camera speaking to reporters outside his home.
I have to bond with my mother and my family now, and I can't give you an interview, and I can't give you a talk back and forth.
Well, Curtis, understandably emotional there. He also thanked everyone involved in negotiating his release. And today we have more info about another American being held by ISIS. The third hostage has been identified as a 26-year-old woman who was kidnapped a year ago while doing humanitarian work in Syria. ISIS has reportedly demanded a $6.6 million ransom for her release. And French citizens support ISIS about as much as they support their own president. A new poll from Newsweek reveals that 16% of French citizens have a positive view of ISIS. President Francois Hollande's approval rate is around 18%. Newsweek's French correspondent attributes the support for ISIS to France's high unemployment rate as well as a high volume of propaganda and internet TV. France is home to an estimated nearly 5 million Muslims, mostly of North African descent. And yet again, President Obama is going around Congress to try and tackle global warming. If you go to whitehouse.gov, in giant letters on one of the subpages, quote, climate change and President Obama's action plan, you can see it for yourself. President Obama has announced a series of executive actions to reduce carbon pollution. President Obama is set to sign a multinational UN climate change agreement, legally requiring countries to adopt new environmental policies and regulations. Back in June, the president issued an executive order that forced coal-fired power plants to curb their emissions. Since then, more than 24 states have filed lawsuits against the EPA and that law. Now, President Obama's plan for a sweeping international agreement may never come to fruition as Republicans gear up to pick up seats in the Senate this November. They need their approval. International treaties can only be approved by a 2/3 majority of the upper house of Congress. Meantime, a UN report on climate change was leaked yesterday and says the effects will be severe, pervasive, and irreversible if nothing changes. I'm John Bachman. More news in 30 minutes. Now back to Midpoint.
Tell